Hello. There was some stuff that didn't fit into the last video, so this is just a potpourri of that. Violence and spoilers as before. So moving chronologically through the game, the first thing I want to talk about is something I actually realized really recently when I went back to play the game when they released Grounded and Permadeath modes, which I really ill-advisedly combined. Specifically the way clickers are reintroduced. Clickers as an enemy have a couple of important characteristics, those being that they're blind, they can still hear very well if you make noise close to them, they can manage to see things in front of them through a sort of clicking echolocation sound, and they have armor over their face from being infected for a long time that can block one bullet, meaning they need to be shot in the head twice to be taken down. Probably a lot of people playing the sequel had played the first one, but even amongst them, a lot of people might have forgotten the specifics of how this enemy worked. The sequel needed to introduce these enemies in a way that didn't make anyone who just played the first game feel really bored, but also introduced the enemy in a thorough enough way that people who'd never played a Last of Us game before or hadn't picked one up since 2013 could still know what was happening. The way the first Last of Us did this was fine. Tess just explains what clickers are to Ellie.
So what, are they blind?
Sort of. They see using sound.
Like bats?
Like bats. If you hear one clicking, you gotta hide. That's how they spot you.
And this works, it gets most of the relevant information across, but it's nothing special. I think the way The Last of Us Part 2 does this is a lot better.
Ellie!
So this is awesome, because you get all the info. You can tell that they can't see Ellie or Dina. You can see that Ellie and Dina are trying to remain still to not make a sound because the zombie would be able to hear that. Then it uses its sonar clicky thing, and it sees both of them, and Dina shoots it once in the head, knocking off its armor, and then shoots it again to finally kill it. You get all the relevant information, and most of y'all that played the game probably didn't even realize this is what was happening. It was just a dramatic scene where Dina saves Ellie. It's great because you get to communicate the game's mechanics without ever needing to take the player out of the game or waste their time getting an explanation. The next thing I want to talk about is something I very briefly talked about in my last video, but didn't really have a way to expand upon without totally ruining my pacing. And that's the way that Last of Us 2 uses living spaces to tell a lot about their characters and fill in time gaps. I once watched a masterclass clip where Malcolm Gladwell talked about what an efficient way to explore characters this is. You can communicate a lot by how organized someone's house is, what they have up on the shelves, and what kind of books they read. The Last of Us Part 2 uses this technique to great effect 3 times, starting with the exploration of Joel's house after his death. Going into this part of the game, we have a lot of questions about how Joel spent the last 4 years of his life. And we get all those answered. We see what he has up on his shelves, we see his workshop, we see all the stuff that he has about Ellie. This tells us everything about Joel that it's important to know. And it did it without even having to show us any flashbacks. And I know people wanted more of those flashbacks, but really for this story, this was one of the most efficient ways to do it. And even probably gets the emotional impact a little bit better because you're missing the absence of Joel's personality, but still having those events stuck in your head. I also like the way it happens again then when we have a little bit of a time jump to Dina and Ellie living on the farm with JJ. You get to see how they settled in their life, and you pretty much are able to fill in anything that's important. There's no need for you to see those months beforehand. And then it's finally driven home at the end with the house being empty and Dina having taken everything. This is so much more powerful as a final message from Dina than any confrontation could be. There's another aspect of Dina's character that I thought was really interesting. We learn a lot about how her sister was kind of paranoid.
She'd sometimes wake up screaming in the middle of the night.
That's rough.
We always had a bag packed so we could bail if something happened.
Which makes it a little more tragic thinking about what Ellie doing a very similar thing, becoming absorbed with revenge, might have done to Dina. And just thinking about how hard it must have been for Dina to stay in that relationship despite how much of a sore spot that was for her.
Never stayed in one place for more than a few weeks. It sucked.
It's nice to have a place we call home, right?
Yeah.
Speaks a lot to how much she loved and cared about Ellie, and it just makes the end a little bit more heartbreaking even though it was already so bad.
You think this is easy? For you and for him, I deal with it.
Dina is kind of in a rough spot in the whole story where she gets a ton of coverage at the beginning and then 20 hours of the game goes by with her getting very little focus. But I think it's more accurate to call her a casualty of the plot structure than a poorly written character. Just one last thing about Dina, this scene where she makes fun of dipshit right-wing militias is really hitting home right now.
In New Mexico, we had these guys called the Ravens. Protectors of the Constitution, they called themselves. Ex-Fedra types who thought Fedra had too many rules. They ran protection rackets. They took multiple wives. Great dudes.
Finally, I want to talk about Mel. I really liked her as a character the first time I played the game without being able to fully articulate why. But she has cool personality flourishes that brought her to life for me, like when I was putting together images to montage for my happy moments in The Last of Us. I put in this clip of Mel doing finger guns because it's funny to me. That's a very human thing. It was human in a way that didn't feel forced. It was just sort of yeah, I believe that Mel would do that. And she behaves in a certain way in fights where she's capable, but clearly a little overwhelmed by it.
Can we say fuck this place?
Yes.
Fuck this place.
I don't know, it's just really human. I also thought her character design was striking because Naughty Dog characters often look like they were made by a conventionally attractive human generator, and Mel's design seems so specific down to her birthmark. It's actually because The Last of Us Part 2 used face models for a lot of its characters, in addition to separate actors that did their motion capture and voice acting. Ashley Birch voices and performs Mel's role, but her face is modeled after Erin McIntosh. I also think Mel fits into the narrative in a lot of important ways. There's a dialogue that I just didn't quite have a way to fit into the last video, but I really appreciate.
We let our guard down, and they strung up an entire squad.
That was in retaliation to us shooting those kids.
Okay, but those kids attacked our guys. What would you do?
I don't know, not riddle them with bullets?
I'd rather save our people.
Manny, they're kids. It's not their fault.
She sort of acknowledges that the war is a little meaningless and doesn't buy into it as much as everyone else. So similar to Owen, she's not mean-spirited, but also similar to Owen, she's kind of selfish. Like in the scene where Owen's trying to stop Ellie and Tommy from being killed.
Too risky to leave them alive. Too fucking bad.
He's right. We can't have loose ends.
When the cards are on the table and it's her or someone else, she'll still pick her. She cares about her family and having that comfortable family life more than anything else.
I'd be happy staying put, I think. Just treating families.
You'd miss fucking up scars.
I don't think so.
She's not gonna go out of her way to do bloodshed, but she's also not gonna put her future family at risk to do the best thing possible either. I think she also comes into really interesting tension with Abby.
You don't think Joel deserved what he got? I think he deserved worse. I just wish I didn't take part in it.
I get it. What kind of a person could do that, right?
I'm not saying that.
Let's see if there's a way to the hatch.
She's basically saying, you wanted the same thing as me, but you just weren't willing to get your hands dirty, which I think is a really interesting dichotomy there. And especially considering the fact that Mel was totally down to just kill 2 innocent people when Abby told them not to. Their relationship comes to a head when Mel gives Abby all this shit for instantly changing her moral outlook on the Seraphites.
Isaac's top scar killer suddenly had a change of heart? Nothing to do with Owen. Right.
It hits Abby really hard because I think this is something she's starting to feel guilt about, but it's also not really something I think Mel has a ton of moral high ground in. She's totally down to kill Seraphites if they're in her way.
She kills scars all the time.
I've seen a little bit of hyper-focus on the fact that Abby doesn't talk about how guilty she feels about what she did to Joel or what she did to anyone else, but she also does something to reconcile it, even if she doesn't have that same demeanor, where I think Mel and her contrast really interestingly, where Mel is someone that doesn't have a really violent rhetoric, but will totally do it if it benefits her and doesn't put her at risk. I think if Mel were in a lot of Abby's position, she wouldn't have gone back to help Lev and Yara. It's just interesting. I think there's some cool character tensions there that I enjoy. I like Mel as a character. I like most of the characters in this game. I like The Last of Us Part 2. I thought it was good. Anyway, thank you to everyone who watches this, and especially anyone who watched the entirety of the last video. I love you. Thank you. And that's it.